東大全然難しくないじゃんとか言うから、いやそんなわけあるかっていうので、
Welcome to the Lazy Fluency podcast, where we have casual conversations switching between English and Japanese so that you can learn from and with us along the way. I'm Joey.
And I'm Yami.
And the topic of the day is elite education in Japan. Before we get into that, make sure to like, subscribe, follow, and or drop a review on whatever platform you're listening on. And with that out of the way, elite education in Japan. Tokyo University, also known as Todai, is considered to be the best school in Japan. To get into a school of such prestige, you of course need to do well in school, help out in your local community, participate in sports and other extracurricular activities, as well as be a good person of character. Except you don't have to do any of those things. You just have to pass a test. Today we're talking about fairness in education. And Aimi, how hard is it to get into Todai, the stats, the numbers? And also, how does the application process work? Because although all you need to do is pass a test, there's a little more information about how you are even able to take this test that you need to pass.
東大はもちろんまあ一番に成績がいいっていうか、まあ入るのが難しいってされてる大学で、まあ京都大学もまあ同じぐらい難しいらしいんだけど、でもそれを東大の人に言うと、いや京大は2番だとかなんか言うから、まあそこら辺は置いといてまあでもすごく難しいのね。で、まあよく慶応とか早稲田もなんかすごいエリート学校だし、なんか入るの難しいよっていう人もいるんだけど、でも国立大学のやっぱ京都大学、東京大学っていうのはまあ格別だなっていうのは思うね。なんでかっていうと、その国立大学っていうのはまず、まあ、共通試験っていうなんていうんだ、standardized exam？Yeah,
standardized test.
そうがあって、そこである程度のボーダーラインの点数を取らないとそもそもアプライができないのね、その国立大学っていうのは。で、まあそこでまあボーダーラインを取れました。でもそこで終わりじゃなくて、またさらにそれぞれの大学のテストを受けて、でまあ合格じゃないっていうのは決まるので、その東京大学にアプライするための共通テストのボーダーラインっていうのがまあ学部によってちょっと違うんだけど、まあ文学部は文系なんていうんだ
Literature?
は、まあ大体そう 86% とかで理系 Science?
Yes, STEM sort of.
そうはまあ 88%、87%。でもやっぱメルスクールは高くて 92% 取らないと、そもそも東京大学にアプライできないと。はい。
So first thing, we have a lot of differences from if you have any other Americans out there where one, in America we do have standardized testing, but as far as I know, you're not specifically prohibited from applying. But what we do is in effect, you're kind of prohibited from applying because you have something called stretch schools, your school that you don't really think you can get in, but you're going to apply. And then you have your safe, which is stuff that you think you'll get in based on, the average SAT score or ACT score, that person who gets into the school. And then you have kind of the ambiguous zone where you could get in or you couldn't get in, but you have a good shot. So although it's not prohibited for application, for example, someone who scores terribly on the SAT is not going to apply to Harvard because you can see the pass, you can see how many people of the student body who got in, and what SAT scores they have. So in America, they sort of have the same system, but you're not actually prohibited from applying. And the second thing that's interesting about the American system when compared to Japan's system is that our best schools are all private, or they're considered, or the things that are considered to be the best schools are private, where in the case of Tokyo University versus other schools, for example, that have much lower acceptance rate, like you mentioned Waseda or some other ones, actually have lower acceptance rates, but there's this weird double barrier going on with Todai. So I think it had a 33% acceptance rate when I looked up a second ago for Todai, which makes it seem pretty high. But you have to consider that, one, everybody people Todai is hard to evaluate because of the fact that they have a actual block from applying, unless you're basically already clearing a very high percentile. I don't know what percentile would be, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's like 90 plus percentile just to even get the chance to apply.
でしか
Or
も
sorry, to take a test, because that's the other part. You have to take tests for the schools you go to, not just take one test and then apply with a bunch of else. You have to take a test for the school you want to get into.
そうでなんかまあこの話になったまあ元々のまあきっかけっていうのがそのねジョイが東大に東大のアクセプタンスレートがまあ倍率ね入試倍率がなんか3倍って書いてあったのね。それで東大全然難しくないじゃんとか言うからいやそんなわけあるかっていうので私がまあ説明したのよ。で私立大学のまあ早稲田大学とか慶応大学っていうのは、まあ倍率が早稲田が7倍ぐらいで、慶応がまあ 4.6 だからまあ5倍ぐらいなのね入試の倍率がアクセプタンスレートがレートがでまあ数字だけ見るとさまあ私立大学の方がまあコンペティティブな感じがするけどでも私立大学っていうのはその共通テストっていうのを受けなくていいしでしかもまあ誰でも受けられるのねもうまあ悪い言葉で言っちゃえばもうバカでも受けられるっていう感じなの。バカから、まあ、頭いい人からもう全員が受けられるのが、まあ、プライベートスクールで、パブリックスクールは、まあ、ボーダーラインがあるところもあれば、まあ、逆にボーダーラインがないところもあるんだけど、まあ、大体は結構優秀な人が行くのがパブリックスクールなのね。で、その、私立の大学が、まあ、コンペティティブで、まあ、たくさんの人が応募する理由としては、まず一つ目が、共通テストがないねさっき言ったやつとっていうやつとあと二つ目がなんだ勉強する教科数が違うんだよ。
Wait, I have one question before. So if you want to get into a private school, for one, I would be clear. I don't think dumb people are probably applying for competitive private school. I don't think that's a thing. I just don't think that's a thing. And in America, it's not a thing. If you maybe some small percentage, but the majority aren't. I don't think. But what I'm saying is, do you actually not need for example, our version, the SAT, to apply? Like, is it not factored in to getting into a private school? Is all you need to do pass their specific tests?
入試の形式によるね。例えば英語入試わかる？
No.
英語入試っていうのはまあなんて言うんだろう。そのレジュメとか見て、あと面接インタビューとか、あとその通ってる高校の成績。やってるなんかボランティアとかわかんないけどそういうエクストラカリキュラムのことエクストラカリキュラム
Yeah,
そうカリキュラムのやってることとかも全て含めて面接プラスちょっとしたテストあんのかなでやるのが栄養入試とか、推薦入試とかっていうんだけどそういった場合はやっぱり SAT GPA とかはまあ必要まあ、日本はちょっと GPA あんま使わないんだけどで、さっき言ったのがさっきの話に戻るけどわかった
Well, yeah, I understood what you're saying, but I guess I have another. I didn't actually realize that other schools, including private, take into account. So basically, so for other schools, it kind of depends entirely. And some schools do take a more like American approach, and they consider things outside of just your test score. But how much do you think that's weighed in, like in terms of, does it actually matter how like other extracurriculars you are, like how many you have and stuff like things like that, or do you think it's mainly just the test score? Because in the U.S., I think we talked about a little bit before, but there is a huge, especially with like a lot of liberal arts schools. Obviously, you have to have a high test score, but sometimes you don't even have to have high test score depending on your background. I'm wondering if you have any idea of how common that is.
High test score
like if how heavily that's weighed in just having a high test score on the 共通テスト。
だからプライベートは共通テスト受けないの。受けなくてアプライできるの。
Okay, not even you don't even have to take it.
そうだから本当にもうプライベートしか受けませんっていう人は共通テストを受けないでその大学に特化した訓練っていうのなんていうのその この大学はこういう問題を出しやすいから、そこの学校のpast papers をもう10年分解くとか、なんかそういう戦略をやってる人も多い。
And just to clarify, for public schools in Japan, you don't have to pay tuition, right?
No, we have to.
You do still? Like for Todai, if you get in Todai, you have to pay?
だけど、いくらだっけな、年間30万とかなのかな？
Is it much lower? Is it much lower?
Much lower. I don't know about the 普通の学部、例えばアートとか、理系の学部は知らないけど、まあメディスクールだったら、東大のメディスクールだと年間6年間で500万とかだから、待って嘘ついてるかもしれないけど、まあいくらだっけな、めちゃめちゃ安いのね。で多分10倍とか違うよ。で私立のメディスクールだともう6年間で2000、3000、4000万ぐらい。
That'd be the difference between like $50,000 or $500,000 for med school, right?
10倍以上は違うと思う。
Yeah, so it's a really big difference. I do want to get into the main, like this fairness discussion here, because I feel like that is something that really interests me. So for Todai, it is the case that aside from the fact that you have to be really good at taking a test to allow you to take another test, nothing else is factored in, right? Into your applications?
まあそうだね。でもこれまたさっきさ説明ちょっとまだしてなかったけど、私立に入るのに必要な教科っていうのはなんか東大とかまあ京大、国立の大学を受けるための教科よりも全然少なくて、もう私立だったら英語、数学、あとなんだ理科のどれか、例えば物理か、科学か、生物だけで入れるんだけど、国立の大学は国語、まあジャパニーズね、ジャパニーズ、英語、数学、あとソーシャルスタディ、まあジオグラフィーとか、あとヒストリーとかと、あとサイエンスね、科学、物理 or バイオロジー、生物で、だからなんていうの、国立の大学に入るにはなんかオーバーオールで良くないとアプライできないし、パスもできないんだけど、プライベートスクール、私立の大学だと自分でなんか苦手な教科は受けないようにできるんだよね。私は特に国語、ジャパニーズが本当にダメで、モックエグザムでさ、これもなんかちょっと笑える話なんだけど、モックエグザムで200点満点中53点ぐらいしか取れなくて、ジャパニーズがマジでジャパニーズなのに、本当に なぜかね、日本の国語っていうのはまず現代文と、あと小説、あと謎に私が本当に嫌いなんだけど、漢文って Old Ancient Chinese Article みたいなのがあって、あと日本の古文っていうのはAncient Japanese language か。
It's like yeah, like yeah, go ahead.
いいよ。
Well, no, it's yeah. So yeah, was it Kanbun? でしたっけ?
漢文が
Yeah,
Chinese.
it's like basically old Chinese stories that like have a lot of literary, like I don't know, scholarship around them, but they've been translated into Japanese, but they retain a lot of the Chinese characters. I actually read some of them, and it just feels like you're reading. It kind of feels like you're not reading the same language. They're just
It is
so
not
much.
the same だもん。
I mean, I'm just saying like it's very hard to compare similarity to it, but for those Japanese learners, I recommend that you check out like Kanbun or some of the stories. There every single word, because it comes from Chinese, is like some yoji jukugo, some compound kanji character. There are very little verb conjugations. It's all just like kanji, suru, sareru, or they have like obviously the older versions of those. But yeah, anyways.
まあそういうのとか、マジ古文と漢文ってさ、今絶対使ってないのよ。なのになんでこんなの勉強しないといけないんだとか、もう漢文なんかもはやさ、違う国だし、なんならっていうわけで、私はそういうのとか、あとまあ普通のね現代文とかできなくて、めちゃめちゃ苦手なのね、国語が。だから私国語が苦手で、それを加味する 大学だったらちょっと点数良くないからっていうことで、まあ、私立をまあ目指すっていうか、まあ、私立の大学を受験するってことになったんだけど、まあそうね、そういう人は結構多い。なんか、
I do want to talk, like I said, I want to get to this discussion of fairness, but there's one more thing. For Todai, once you do the general test, do you have to do a specific test for a subject you're interested in or a school or part of Todai? Because something that I mentioned is Todai is actually a bunch of different like branches under the same, like, of smaller schools, like, I guess, or what do you call them? Different departments. Sorry, Todai has a bunch of different departments. Yeah. And do you have to apply for a test for a specific department, or do you apply generally and then get accepted? Or do you not know that?
ちょっと私東大はもちろん受けたことないので分かんないんだけど、多分セパレートだと思うよ。多分ね。
Okay, that's something else. I mean, generally for a lot of like the most famous schools in the U.S., you actually just, aside of you don't have a specific test, but you also just generally get accepted, and then you figure out where you're going. But I do want to. Okay, so the topic of fairness here. So, because I think this is so interesting. In the U.S., like I said, public schools are something you go to that tend to have a very high acceptance rate. It's basically like if you passed high school, then you can come in. And private schools tend to be the ones that are more competitive, which it seems like they're similar to Japan. Where, in my perspective, this kind of system makes a lot of sense because you want to be able to educate your population as much as possible. To me, it seems a little weird that two things. One, I know that Todai is like the most popular and probably obviously other public schools. But it seems to me a little strange that it's like backwards for Todai and it's so exclusionary, given the fact that you'd think like the country for its citizens would want to, give the best education to as many people who want it. And the second thing that I find a little weird is the fact that no other criteria are taken into account and the effects that has in terms of, so I guess the first thing is, do you think the system of only taking into account test scores is fair? And then I have some my thoughts and some questions after that.
わかんない。私、こう見えてね、もう5年生だから、今の受験のシステムはよく分かってないんだけど、なんなら私の、学年、私の代が、受験終わって、確か2、3年後に、その共通テストが変わったんだよ。うちらの時はセンター試験って言って、全部マークだったのね。マルティプルチョイスで、ショートアンサーズとかなかったんだけど、なんか今はショートアンサーズもあるし、しかも英語はわかんない。スピーキングあるかわかんないんだけど、なんかもうちょっと実用的な感じになったりとか、なんかよく考えさせる問題が増えたっぽくて、試験も変わりつつあるっていうのは聞いている。ちょっとそこはもうちょっと調べなきゃわかんないけど、変わってきてる。
No, I'm saying, do you think that it is fair for the only criteria to let somebody into a school be a test? An academic test, to be clear.
それはさすが、なんて言うんだろう。もちろん面接とかをやって人間性を見たりする必要はあると思うんだけど、でも大学側からするとさ、なんていうの、1万人とか受けるわけじゃん、その大学に。それを一人一人面接をやってたらもう気が暮れるよね。だし、もうすんごい労力、すんごい時間かかっちゃうから、大学側としては、その、受け入れる、合格にする、学生の質を見るために、点数を見るのは、しょうがないっちゃしょうがないとは思うし、で、あとなんだろう。他の成績以外のクライテリアを考慮するってなった時にさ、やっぱりなんだろう、家庭が裕福とか高等教育を受けさせてあげられるだけの家庭だった場合は、そういうボランティア活動であったり、あとなんて言うんだろうね、エクストラなことがたくさんできるからさ、レジュメにもよくいいことが書けるじゃん。だけどあんまり余裕がない家庭出身の人だとさ、あんまりいいってなんて言うんだろう、たくさんのことはレジュメに書けないじゃん。例えば なんだろう、日本だと留学してましたとか言って言うのは結構プレスティージだっけ、で、イギリスに2年間1年間いましたとかだと、それをレジュメに書いて、じゃあこの人は英語がめちゃめちゃできるんだとか、なんならその帰国子女だけの枠があって、それで大学入る人もいるしっていうの。でもそれってさ、やっぱり家族がやっぱりそういう留学をさせてあげられる余裕がないとできないことだから、そこは不公平になっちゃうんじゃないのかなっていうのはわかるから、テストの点数だけ見るっていうのは、そういった面でちょっとあまりお金に余裕がない人はさ、頑張ればテストの点数はさ上がるわけだから、平等になるっちゃなるのかなっていうのは思うけど。
Yeah, I mean, I guess I just disagree with you, but I'll tell you why I disagree with you. So, for one, when you're considering other factors into a test, you actually consider the circumstances of the person. You don't just consider the things on their resume. So, for me, I mean, as well as my other, like the college I went to, I was the only person in my entire, next to my brother, because we went to the same college. He was the only person in the entire state who came from Idaho, but also the first Panamanian at the same time. Both the first Panamanian and the first person from Idaho to come from the state. And so when you're talking about factors that are coming into it, it's not as though they're just looking at did you go abroad, or do you have, do music? Generally, especially for more competitive schools, it tends to be what circumstances did you have, and did you take advantage of them as much as you could. For example, for my school that I went to in high school, it did not offer as many AP classes as a lot of the schools, but I took the ones that were available to me, I don't even think I took all of them, but I took, well, yeah, at least I took the classes. I didn't think I took all the AP tests. And even though it was less than other schools, they were able to consider the fact that Joey didn't even have that as an option. And so because of that system, if I were just being compared, this person did this person that, you might find other people who took more AP classes, but in a system where you take other things into effect, it wouldn't just be, this person, went to 2 years and took 5 AP classes, because they'd be like, Joey's from Idaho. Nobody, like, Idaho is 50th in education funding. And so you actually are, like, you're talking about a family that has less money. They are the ones who would hypothetically even get advantage, or not advantage, but even it out. Because they'd be like, this family didn't have any money. This family lives in a place with no opportunities. We can actually bring them in. Whereas, for example, a standardized test does exactly what you're saying it does, but for the rich people. Because the people who are able to have especially, I know friends who have gone to Todai, and they're all extremely wealthy families, doctor parents, both people I know, specifically who went to Todai, doctor parents from the best Tokyo, doctor university. They were getting a prep school from like their beginning. They literally went to the United States to take an education, to come back to get them, into a med school, and they're the ones who are going to score the best on the test because they have the most resources. And there's no way for obviously the just from a test for you to, like, to me it's like the I think you always use like it's like you have Olympic running coach, and you also have like the Olympic running genetics or whatever, and then you're like, oh no, it's fair that we both decide who gets into this school based on running because anybody can run. And you're like, well, the guy who's training with, whose dad's Usain Bolt, and whose his entire life is spent training Usain Bolt because he has the money and time to do so. It's not fair to put him in the same race as the guy, he's always Usain Bolt. I don't know why. He's the only runner that anybody ever knows. And as a track and field runner, it's like one of the only recognized people I can talk about, that people actually know who I'm talking about. But my point is basically, I think standardized tests have that exact problem that you're talking about, not the other way around.
確かにやっぱりさ、お金がある人ほどプライベートホームチュートリングとか、そういう塾系っていうのにお金を、かけられるし、なんなら私は小学生の時にちょっとクラムスクールなのかクラムスクールか、塾行って、でそこからプライベートのジュニアハイスクール行ったんだけど、それってやっぱりある程度お金がないとできないじゃん。 からまあスコアbetter スコア取るにはやっぱりそこにもお金がかかるから、そこもやっぱり格差は出てるから何とも言えない。なんか どっちもいいところもあるし悪いところもあるっていうのはなんか白黒分けられない。
If you can tell, I'm very critical of the only standardized test system. Because there's also another argument or question here, which is, does it matter if it's fair, if it's good for the country? And my argument would be, and this is something I want to hear about, is one, just in terms of like your general diversity. Diversity has been shown in so many different facets. We talked about this, we had a whole episode on diversity, on whether it be cultural background, like your racial, as well as just like your background, like whether STEM, non-STEM. It has a whole bunch of just positive effects in pretty much any company, business. There's so many studies about economic facets in like worker, whether it be CEOs, even though you can tell I'm pretty critical of businesses in general. A lot of benefits are there. So when I'm talking about fairness, I guess I'm also arguing for a more effective system at doing what it's trying to do. And my other thing that I want to talk about is what I think is the biggest problem with the system is having a system that is only test-centric encourages the entire population to basically waste so much of their youth just learning and studying for a test that is only relevant, for a very small part of their life. And who the hell cares about Kambun after high school or Kogo or anything? And how no, but I'm saying, and how much time do you need on average to spend to get into Todai? And then what do you think of, we've had this like a little bit before, but I think this really, do you think this whole standardized test only approach for the public schools and like Todai is a reason that Japan has Juku culture?
パブリックスクールに合格するために、
No, the fact that you only care about the test for some of the best universities in Japan, like Todai, do you think that is one of the reasons, like one of the big reasons that cram school is such a big thing in Japan?
それはそうだよ。それはだってハイスコア取るためにさ、塾行くじゃん。
Yeah.
そうだよ。
No, but it's not just that. I'm saying, do you think it's the fact that it's only a test? For example, there is like obviously people go Harvard or whatever, but it's just not that big of a deal not as huge of a deal, not even comparatively huge of a deal in the United States. Most of my friends, maybe I didn't go to the privatest of private schools or prep schools or whatever, but I rarely knew anybody who spending every waking hour. Okay, you still actually explain how much are people studying for Todai who get in? Just for
なんかさっき、ちょっと見たら、平均で1日10から12時間勉強してるっていうのが、高校3年生の時点でね、なんかアンケートが出てたらしくて、私学校で高校3年生の時になんか勉強合宿みたいなのあったんだけど、成田空港の近くでのホテルを借りて学年全体で勉強合宿をしようということでなんかそこ行ったのね。でなんかスケジュール全部決められてて自分が好きな時間に抜けたりできないのよ。でずっと椅子に座らせられて確か11時間ぐらいやらされたのかな。私本当に苦痛で仕方なくて、もうしまいにはもうお尻が痛くなったからさ、地面に座って椅子を机にしてなんかやってるふりしてたけど、運動もしちゃいけないし、もうなあれはやばかった。とりあえず10時間以上椅子に座るのはもう本当に耐えられなかったから、でもそれを東大とかね、結構ハイレベルな学校行ってる人たちは毎日やってるんだなと考えるとすごいなっていうのもあるし、で YouTube で面白いビデオ見たのが中国の中学校か高校のなんかインタビューのビデオかな。で本当にちっちゃい子がもう1日11時間朝から晩まで勉強してて、ですんごいストレスインアウトしてる感じのビデオ見たことある
？Yeah, but I mean, I feel like Japan is very similar to that, just being.
いやでもあそこまでではないよ。
I mean, I feel like if you probably were around the Todai, like people, they would.
いやそこまでではないけど。
I mean, 10 to 12 hours means if you're sleeping normal 8 hours, there's only 4 hours that you're not studying the day, and that's the average. To be clear, we're talking about.
あとなんか私の近くの友達で言ってたのが、その医学部に行くためだけのなんか医学部受験塾っていうのかな、 そうっていうのがあって、まあそういう塾に行くのにはすんごいお金かかるんだけどね、1年間に400、500万とかかかるんだけどね。で、言ってたのが、なんかもう部屋が逃げられないように、なんかジェオみたいになんか柵がついてて、で、朝はなんていうの、みんなチャイムかなんかで起きて、で、every minute 全部スケジュールされてて、で寝る時間も決められててっていう、なんかそういうとこ入ってなくてよかったなっていうぐらいのなんか恐ろしいこと聞いたんだけど、いやでもやっぱりそういう厳しい塾っていうのは、まあ、日本にも、まあ、あって、やっぱりなんか受験戦争っていうのはすごい激しいなっていうのは感じたね。でもこの日本の受験戦争は韓国とか中国に比べたらまだまだ甘いもんで、韓国中国ってすんごい学歴社会っていうか、なんていうんだろう、受験がどれだけ重要かっていうのが本当にレベル違うらしいね。
Well, yeah, but I mean, I just want to say, because we're going something towards the end, and I want to mention something here, which is like all of this work is done and like peaks at the point when somebody kind of gets into the school. And it is very common for people after, you might be thinking, well, does it produce better workers? Japan has the lowest efficiency out of any OECD nation in terms of productivity done in per hour spent with work. So let's be clear about that. No. On average, does not produce better workers. Germany, actually, who just passed Japan GDP, shout out to Germany, has some of the most, efficient workers, you could say. So I don't think there's even an argument on that perspective. And two, the learning that's actually specialized to all people's fields comes after high school. Like it comes whatever they're doing. And with a lot of those, like whether it be college or something, it's so lax by comparison. And I think that might even be intentional because people know they're so burnt out. But I'd be very curious to know. So this is to say that to learn the thing that you actually need to learn, you don't actually need to give up your entire life. So I just think it's extremely backwards for the entire country to incentivize its population to just waste so much of their like crucial socialization and like formative years for for debatably no benefit, especially because afterwards you're ending with a bunch of extremely burned out students going into college. And I've never gotten to this Hikimori episode that we'll see if I ever decide to do or not. But I'll let you know that a lot of the the best students become Hikimori, and part of it is associated with burnout. So
なんか大学に入るのがゴールって考えてる人が本当に多くて、で、なんて言うんだろう、会社にまあ就職するときにいい大学出身ですってなるとさ、やっぱりかっこいいし、なんか取ってくれるじゃん。東大出身ですって言ったらみんな取りたいじゃん、そういう人。だからそのために、まあ、東大とかね、いい大学行ってる人が結構多くて、なんかちょっとそれが目的でいいのかなっていう感じのはなるけど、まあね、どうなんだろうね。
I actually have a whole bunch of other stuff that I want to talk about on the subject, but our podcast format. So let us know your thoughts on fairness. What do you think makes a fair system? In terms of like applying to it, and what do you think the downsides of having whatever, or ups or downsides are to the given system that you think is the most fair? 戻りました。We're
back.
今日初めての Lazy Fluency Unplugged のなんていうか会議イベント、やるつもり。
But it's not for you guys. And by the time we're doing that unplugged thing, we how do you say? It's done. Yeah, because we're gonna release the episode one day after this event. So sorry, you guys. But this is at my medical school, so it's like not for like public, yeah.
People.
So it's just for students here, and the reason that we can do this is because one of my teachers, English teacher, like invited us to do this event.
最初はその普通のポッドキャストと同じようにライブでやるって頼まれたんだけど、でもそれはちょっとなんていうか ほとんどの学生は私たちのポッドキャスト聞いてないから、そこからなんていうか、それよりも他のその魂、ポッドキャストの魂のもとに、なんというか、英会話と日本語ができる環境を作ってほしかった、その先生がね。
Yeah, and also like he has already like a English event at school, and we'll do similar stuff. But I guess we are the first ones who do the event at my school.
どういうこと？なんか初めてのこういう
Like
なんか
outsiders.
スペシャル、
そう
そう。まあ、アウトサイダーっていうのは私だけだけどね、部外者
Yeah,
かな。
yeah.
うん。ちなみにこういうなんか発表するときとかあったことある？その大きな、会議とか、なんか人の前で。
Yeah, I've done presentations about my exchange program in New York, and I did like no, it was actually 3 or 4 times, and the biggest one was in front of professors, students, and even parents, and that was a big one, and others were introducing what exchange program is to juniors. So yeah, I've done a couple.
英語でやったことあるかな？
Yeah, in English, I did one time for professors, and the biggest one, and then others were in Japanese.
うん。私も一回かな。なんか授業の前でたくさんもちろん日本語のプレゼンやったことあるんだけど、その大きな、私が留学してた時に、そのなんかみんなのホストファミリーがいるんだね。で、そのホストファミリーと生徒の最初の出会い時にプレゼンがあって、でもそのプレゼンがある前に2人のそのプログラムに入っている学生はなんていうかちょっとだけの挨拶とか、その学生としての挨拶をしなくちゃいけなくて、で、1分ぐらいのスピーチだけだったんだけど、めっちゃやばかった。私がなんか緊張しすぎて、なぜかというと、普段は友達とか学校の前にやると、私学校っていうか同じ生徒学年の人の前にやると、そんなになんか何も持ってない、なんか自然にできる。でもその日本人の親の顔を見たときに、こういう人はなんていうか、私冗談なんか普通になんか発表してるときにやる人だし、そういうことをやったらみんなに怒られると思ったから、スピーチを書かないといけない。普段はほぼ何も準備しなくてもスピーチできるタイプ。できるっていうか、レイジーというのもあるんだけど、本当に台本を書くと、なんか何もなんか考えられなくなっちゃう。なんかわかる？その発表してるときに、
You just like remember all the lines. And then once you forget the line, and then just one part, you forgot one part, and then you can't think about like
もう考えてなかったから。
Yeah.
そう、本当に暗記しようとした。唯一のなんか最初で最後だった。その台本を書いて演技みたいにやろうとするのはなぜかというと、本当になんか発表に来た時なんか何でしたっけ、その壇上、ステージに上がって人の前に立って、私が自身が一応なんか多分何百回本当になんか頭の中で同じ1分の日本語のセリフを繰り返したんだけど、その実際本番に来た時にそのなんていうかステージフライとか、入るかな、なんか何も出てこなかった。最初の初めましてシーンってなって、で何も言えなくて、で先生がなんかパソコンを持ってきて、でその後は台本から読んでたんだけど、マジでやばかった。
Yeah, I don't think remembering the script is good for like giving presentation in front of people, because you you will be monotone.
棒読み。
Yeah, 棒読み. And if you're doing 棒読み, then people would not listen to your presentation. So that's like lose-lose.
まあ本当になんか演技だったらできるけど、もちろん映画だとみんなは覚えてるでしょ、セリフとか。その場で、まあその場である程度即興的なやり方あるんだけど、まあ私にとってなんか向いてないかな、そういうような。
But like not preparing like at all is not good.
いや今の時点で私のやり方は1回なんか2回3回ぐらい即興的なやり方で練習する。
You have to have at least like bullet points that which you want to talk about beforehand. I guess, yeah.
まあ練習でそのブルットポイントを見つけるって感じ。まあってことは今日は全然なんか英語と日本語で喋ってるけどセンスとかないし、そんなに大事なことじゃないからマジで心配しないけど、こういう発表になるときはいつもそのすごく最悪の時についてなんかその考えは蘇ってくるので、本当に。そうそう、今週ウンパルンパじゃなくてウォンカ見た。だって私ゴジラ見た。
Yeah. And then Wonka was, it was a pretty good movie, but I wish that they had 4D without dubbing. Yeah. I wish they had 4D subtitles, English voices.
日本だと一番人気なのはその映画見るときは字幕じゃなくて英語のオリジナルバージョンじゃなくて日本語の吹き替え dub の方が夢っていうか人気ってことはそのいろんな上映があるじゃん。でその4つの上映があってその1つだけは元々のバージョン英語でできてた。でなんかアメリカでは想像できないぐらい本当になんか国として恥でやるべきなことだと思うんだけど、でもどう感想はみんなウォンカを見た方がいいかな、見ない方がいい。
I guess it's for little kids and also adults, so it's like みんなのためのもの。 And then I like what I was watching the movie. I felt like I wanted to have like some sweets, so make sure to buy sweet popcorn, but the one we bought was not good popcorn, so we were not so satisfied with popcorn we bought, because like in the picture they said it was half and half chocolate and salt popcorn, but actually they just put just a tiny amount of chocolate, like, and then it seemed like they're covering to the bottom.
なんか最後までチョコと普通のポップコーンがあるじゃん。
Yeah, but it was just surface.
その表面だけはチョコポップコーンでその表面の下にあったのは普通のポップコーンだけって感じ。ってことはなんか 90% 普通のポップコーンだったんだけど、一見から見るとそれは 50% チョコポップコーンで50% 普通のポップコーンでもそういう状況じゃなかった。またみんなは本当にゴジラ見た方がいいと思う。またこの最後のセクションでは他のおすすめがあるんだけど、一応ここで言いたいのはゴジラ見た方がいいと思う。すごかった。And we're back with the final section. And if you made it to the final section, you send an email to lazyfluency@gmail.com with the comment, question, language related, and or otherwise. And this week we have one question from Oddity. Well, there's a longer question, but very political and nuanced. And I don't think Amy would know what to say about it.
It's not a political podcast.
Well, it's sort of political sometimes. I mean, I'm all down, but I just don't think Amy is very aware of the topic. Sorry, Oddity. But so another question, which is, why are trains such a big deal in Japan? From a cursory check online, it is one of the most densely developed rail systems. So what led up to that, and why do Japanese prefer trains over other modes of transportation? So, want to actually make a whole thing about trains in Japan. By whole thing, it's my ever never-ending list of main channel videos, which is like at 20 or 30 at this point, but I take so long editing, I can barely even get one out in a 3-month span, but that's a whole separate conversation. What I do want to talk about is I actually think this is something that is it's like true in one sense, but also very misleading. Japan does love trains, and they're very dense, and even in the rural places, there are a lot of trains, but Japan also has a huge presence of cars, which I talk about in America, but I don't think I made it clear enough that Japan also has, in my opinion, especially places that are more like filled with elderly folk. You have like this morning, explain this. We were just walking out. This is Inaka, and you would have thought we were in the middle of like New York, like what's it called, primetime traffic. Do you have any thoughts on the whether like what the balance of people who use trains and not use trains in Japan, or do you think that people even like trains or thinking about them? Because I don't really think they do.
東京の方がやっぱり電車があるからあんまり車を持ってる人は少ないのかなと思うし、なんなら車を都内で持ってるともうパークするのにもめちゃめちゃお金かかるとか、持ってるだけでねお金かかるし、電車使った方が早いし安い。
Have you heard of anybody ever speaking like there's a whole trend called like urbanism or urbanists in the United States where people are wanting to like make places more walkable, more livable, 15-minute cities and a bunch of other expressions. Have you ever heard of somebody actively like talk about any of these things in Japan? Because in my impression, people aren't train lovers or anything. They just don't think about it. It just makes sense because it's the better option, which is what I would say to generally about why trains are so helpful. But there still is what I would call American runoff car loving, like from like, America's influences on Japan and its car culture, where I still think it's a status symbol to own a car. And I think most of like, how many of your friends like drive even they don't need to?
We need to なんだけどね。clinical clerkship の、ローテーション、ね、メンバーが全部で7人いるんだけどね、私のチームに。で、車持ってないのは私だけだね。で、車が必要な理由としては、そのホスピタルがもう田んぼの中にあって、そこに到達するには、電車とバスプラス歩きをしないとダメだし、なんならそれをすると車を使うよりもプラス30分ぐらいかかっちゃうんだよ。
Let's be clear here. It's not that walking a minute to a train station is not an arduous task. And there are like, I'm not gonna, I don't want to give information that we can do too much, but there are multiple train stations, even connecting to Tokyo. Like the line, if you were to take it the whole way down, going all the way, one train station, another train station, you could take things all the way to Tokyo, even like, I don't know, maybe to connect to some other like, really far parts of Japan, either left, east, or west. So you can live in like the most Inaka place ever. Maybe, I don't know, even Hokkaido has an underground,
Sure, I've never been to Hokkaido.
Oh, no, but there's a rail network that goes from Hokkaido to Aomori.
Seikan Tunnel.
So yeah, even if you were to live in like, Aomori, I bet you could probably take a train to get to Tokyo. So just being clear here, there's no situation where it's like you're far from it. It's like what Aimi just said, where it's like, well, I'd have to get a bike to go, to get the most optimal route, or I'd have to walk 5 minutes, and leave me 20 minutes later or something like that. So I don't think that's have to. My sister is having this whole car problem, and here's her options. She can either take the bus system, which because of how convoluted it is, it would take 2 hours and 40 minutes to get to where she works, or take a car and it's 20 minutes.
And then how does that happen?
I looked at the map, I saw the Google map, I was like, oh, you're in this place. You should, like a big city, you should totally be able to do it. And I look at the map and I'm like, oh yeah, this is the fastest you got. And on a good day, you can make it for 2 hours. The average day, 2 hours and 30 minutes. And then I'm like, well, how long your drive? She's like, 15, 20 minutes. I looked up, it's like, yeah, it's 19 minutes or something. So that's when I say Americans like need a car. And that's to be clear, this isn't like in a big city, United States with good transport. Where I live, like, rural Idaho, the options are you either get a car, That's it. That's the option. Or to be like, I estimate time 2 days. 2 days of walking. But yeah, there's one more thing I want to talk about. Also, don't worry, Oddity, eventually, hopefully, there's a whole bunch of stuff I want to make train videos on. But this week, or was it this last week, was the opening weekend for Kimi tachi wa dou ikiru ka, or Where Will You Live, or the worst American translation to this. For some reason, it wasn't translation, just The Boy and the Heron, Hayao Miyazaki's maybe not last film. And I'm so happy. The reception, number 1 in the box office, critically acclaimed. I love the film. I think I talked about that. Really awesome film. If you don't like the film, bad take. That's all I have to say. And I heavily recommend, if you are in America or not in America, see the film in theaters. It is currently in theaters right now. I need to do my, my missionary work to get people watching the film.
Missionary work.
I love the film. It's one of my favorite Studio Ghibli films. I talked about it a little bit before, but I'm still not going to spoil anything. But now you have the opportunity. You want to see Miyazaki's last film. It is in theaters. Please watch the film. I want a film like this to be successful, mainly so that when I'm in the U.S., we get more films coming into theaters. And also it's just such an awesome film. I feel like the Japanese. I don't want to go too much into this, but the Japanese audience is not what I would call the intended audience for films that require you to think.
なんだっけな。星の評価が5中 3.2 とかだった気がするけど、で、なんか星1にしてる人たちが、なんか結構意味がわからなすぎたとか、あと気持ち悪いとか書いてあって。
The one person literally just said, I have toriatama. だからわからない。Like that guy I respect, because at least he's like, oh, I'm an idiot, so that's why I don't understand the film. I guess I would say, I don't want to spoil anything, is this film is a little more complex than normal Ghibli films. Like I said, the title, How Will You Live, is a much better title than The Boy and the Heron. The Boy and the Heron sounds like a family kids film. This I think can be watched by everybody, but I think it's most appreciated by people who are into film, and also people have seen a lot of Ghibli. If you're looking to turn off your brain, I don't suggest this Ghibli film, I guess. But I still suggest everybody watch it because it's so good. And it makes me happy that it is number 1 in the box office for the first week. Especially, I guess, I wanted to make sure that everybody's doing it. Also, I'm going to redouble down on the Godzilla. If you check out Godzilla, it was pretty dope.
Also, I want to watch Hunger Games, prelogue,
prequel. There we go, prequel. Oh, if you're wondering why this is all movie talk, recently, basically, I realized that there was a rural other town, which is not, I don't consider it rural because it's there's a whole train station that goes into it, and there's a big theater built into it coming from the train station, and there's 4DX in a rural place in Japan, which in America never would happen. And the tickets were so incredibly inexpensive that it blew my mind. And I also learned that for every film they have a whole there's a whole merchandising goods line coming in. For Godzilla film, you could get these giant Godzilla cups. And there was a Spy Family movie coming up, and for the Spy Family movie, if you buy a ticket during the opening week, you also get a little light novel version of the movie just for free with your ticket, and it's super common. There's another movie called was it Seishin Butayaro, which is Bunny Girl Senpai, or there's another word for it, one of the movies for it, where you get a novel of the book of the movie, which the actual novel for the movie, because it's based off of light novel. You get a poster, and you get a drink cup that is designed just for the movie. And so I was like, bro, the Japanese movie game experience is just so on point. No, you just pay crazy amount, and then that's it, and then you get the movie. There's nothing, you don't get any cool stuff. And so I was like, bro, I need to go to the movie more often, because I just hadn't been doing it. And last time I told you in Japan, I only did it once for Avatar. And I'm not even an Avatar fan. It was good though. But yeah, ever since I did that, I think I went to movie 3 times in a week. Did we? I think so. But yeah, no, I'm loving it. So I'm currently on that movie that movie grind. And I definitely recommend checking out Japanese theaters. It's just better top to bottom. It's not dirty either. But yeah, those are today's recommendations. Make sure to see Kimi tachi wa dou ikiru ka. Very, very important. Do yourself a favor. That bell means we reach the end of today's episode. Thanks for joining us in another lazy conversation towards fluency. If you have any language-related questions and are just looking for general advice, send an email to lazyfluency@gmail.com. We might respond in the next episode. Also, make sure to check out our podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and more. We'd appreciate the support. This has been Joey.
And Ayami.
Signing off.
Ja
Ja ne.